Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This is a literature short. These are short videos to revise each chapter of Jekyll and Hyde. And in this video, we're going to look at chapter 6, The Remarkable Incident of Dr. Lanyon. We will look at the events in the chapter and then at some of the language used. Let's move over here to look at the events. Following the death of Carew, the police continue to search for Hyde, but he has disappeared. There's no sign of him, despite the offer of a reward. We are told that more tales of Hyde's cruelty have emerged since the death of Carew, but that the man himself cannot be found. We are also told that in Hyde's absence, Jekyll has seemed much healthier and happier. Utterson attends dinner at Jekyll's house, where Lanyon is present. However, just 4 days later, Utterson goes to visit Jekyll and is denied entrance to the house. Jekyll is refusing to see anybody. The same thing occurs 3 days later. Utterson goes to see Dr. Lanyon, and this is the part where we're told that Dr. Lanyon had his death warrant written legibly upon his face. He looks incredibly ill and confesses to Utterson that he has had a shock. He also insists that he wishes to see or hear no more of Jekyll. Utterson returns home and writes to Jekyll to ask him about the break from Lanyon. Jekyll replies, but doesn't really give a straight answer. We're told that the reply was often darkly mysterious in drift. Within 3 weeks, Lanyon has died. After his funeral, Utterson opens a letter addressed to him, labelled Private, for the hands of G.J. Utterson alone, and, in case of his predecease, to be destroyed unread. He opens the envelope to find another envelope inside, also sealed, and with the instruction not to be opened till the death or disappearance of Dr. Henry Jekyll. The chapter draws to a close with news that Utterson continues to visit Jekyll and is denied access every time. Poole reports that Jekyll has become even more reclusive and is spending most of his time in his lab, even sleeping there on occasions. Utterson hears the same news from Poole every time and slowly visits with less and less frequency. We'll now have a look at some of Stevenson's language and consider the implications of it. Let's move over here to do this. We'll start with the first paragraph. It is immediately clear that Stevenson has created a juxtaposition between Jekyll and Hyde in this opening. You may have already noticed how Hyde is described as really quite monstrous. We're told that tales of his cruelty were revealed. Stevenson describes him as callous and violent, and his life is described as a vile life. We hear that his associates, that means the people he surrounds himself with, friends and acquaintances and so forth, were strange. And Stevenson also says that tales of the hatred around his career were revealed. There is nothing positive here at all. All of this language is indicative of a barbaric, atrocious man. It is significant, though, that Jekyll is also described in this opening, for the paragraph itself supports the contrast between the good and evil sides within Jekyll. Jekyll is described as having a new life, and there's a strong sense of openness and light following this phrase. In fact, the phrase new life speaks of renewal and perhaps innocence. Stevenson says that he came out of his seclusion, bringing images of his transition from being shut away into the open. This is also articulated very literally with the line, he was busy, he was much in the open air, he did good. And also we're told that Jekyll's face seemed to open and brighten. We can see the clear images of light, positivity and health. This juxtaposition within the opening paragraph is then followed by an immediate reversal of all this positivity. Once more, Stevenson's structure serves to throw the reader from one extreme to another as we follow the events. It's almost impossible to predict what will come next. This structure enables us to feel a real sense of unease at the mystery. This, of course, also reflects Utterson's experience as a character and reinforces our understanding of how both Lanyon and, to an extent, Utterson's determination to have a rational explanation for everything is seriously challenged. Let's now look at the description of Lanyon. No doubt you will have studied the line, he had his death warrant written legibly upon his face. And it's a useful quotation and definitely worth examining. But more of this follows. Stevenson writes that the rosy man had grown pale, his flesh had fallen away. And at once the notion of the death warrant is reinforced. There is clear and strong imagery of death here, and the description's very graphic. Evidently, Lanyon has lost weight, but to describe this process as such, his flesh had fallen away, is particularly gruesome, and something that sounds more like processes that occur after death. We're told that he was visibly balder and older. Here the word visibly is interesting, for we know that what we can see is perhaps evidence of the truth of the world. Utterson can see and rationalise that Lanyon has become ill, but what is more shocking to him is a look in the eye and quality of manner that seem to testify to some deep-seated terror of the mind. And this is where we see the tension between the rational, the things that can be seen and explained and evidenced, with a sense of the supernatural. This deep-seated terror of the mind is caused by Lanyon having witnessed the transformation in Jekyll, but neither the reader nor Utterson will know this until chapter 10. At this point, it's just sinister, dark and mysterious. Lastly, I'm just going to put this line up here. It's from Jekyll's letter to Utterson. I have brought on myself a punishment and a danger that I cannot name. This is followed by the quite famous line, if I am the chief of sinners, I am the chief of sufferers also. But let's look at this punishment quotation in some detail. There's a sense in the novel of the passive acceptance of humans facing punishment, possibly from a higher being, for past behaviour, and it's embodied in this line. Think back to chapter 2, when Utterson considers why Jekyll could possibly have Hyde in his will. He thinks that it must be some old sin, the cancer of some concealed disgrace, punishment coming, pede claudo. There is perhaps a sense here of the humble side to Jekyll, for he acknowledges that he has brought this upon himself. This, coupled with his comment that it's a danger that he cannot name, gives us an indication that he knows he has taken his ventures too far. He's created a monster, and in playing God like this, he's out of his depth. Of course, as chief of sufferers, we know that he's miserable in his predicament. He's meddled in the supernatural, and in the world of this novel, where meddling in such matters is possible, we get the lasting impression that it should really be left well alone. We'll leave it there. I'll be back soon with chapter 7, which is actually a very short chapter. So until then, thanks for watching, and goodbye.